Okay, hello everyone. My name is Stephanie Peterson and I am joined today by Erin Hart. We are going to take you through the ins and outs of sound walls and hopefully answer some burning questions you have on your journey to start sound walls in your classroom.
Thanks, Steph. So we're going to dive into first talking about what a sound wall is. And as we move through this material today in this session, I want you to think about where you're at with this. What do you know already? Have you started them and it's just not quite coming together? Or are you brand new to these and need all the details? So just think about that in your context and hopefully things will become more clear to you. And of course, we're always available to answer questions. If that needs to happen. So what is a sound wall? It's a way to organize and display the 44 speech sounds, which we call phonemes in the English language, and connect those corresponding letters called graphemes. And the walls are broken up into a consonant wall and a vowel wall. And so you can just see by those pictures below how they're kind of divvied up. We're going to get into the particulars of how we do that momentarily, but it's really just that wall to display the sounds. And because there are over 200 letters to represent the 44 sounds in our language, it's no wonder that learning to read and spell is so tricky for our most emergent learners. So sound walls really do support reading and writing very effectively because they provide that explicit instruction of the speech sounds and the articulation of those speech sounds, and then the corresponding letters. Okay, that really directly supports your phonological awareness and phonics instruction. Children are hardwired, we are hardwired for speech, but not print. So when we really focus on that explicit instruction and the articulation of those sounds, it sort of primes our brain for print and see those connections. Oh, those are the letters that represent those sounds. It makes clear those connections. And then sound walls, because they're displayed up in your classroom, they really are an ongoing visual reference for your students and yourself to utilize in your classroom. We all know that we've had walls up for various reasons in the past that we don't always utilize, and that's not effective. But when we refer to something all the time, whether it's that personal dictionary or a sound wall up on your wall or an anchor chart, then we know that it enhances learning. Okay, so we've had word walls for many years in our classrooms, and I always had them in my classroom. And I thought it would be great to put together a visual for you to sort of see the difference between a word wall and a sound wall so that you can see sort of how much more effective the sound wall is when we're teaching our students to read and write. So a word wall is organized by the letters of the alphabet, right? Those 26 letters. A sound wall is organized by speech sounds. So it doesn't look that way. It doesn't look like a big alphabet with a bunch of words under it. A word wall is organized from print to speech. So you focus on those words under each of those letters and then what those words sound like, right? With a sound wall, we're starting with the sound, what that sound looks like, the mouth picture, all of that. And then we move into the corresponding print, which is how our brains are hardwired. So it makes sense that that would be more effective with our instruction. A word wall is focused on just that first letter of words, right? But not necessarily the sound. And I'm going to show you an example momentarily. A sound wall focuses on the phoneme, so those sounds, and then the corresponding letters that goes with those sounds. Okay, with a word wall, we're focused on kind of memorizing that one word, right? With a sound wall, we're focused on the sounds, the corresponding letters, and therefore we can transfer those skills to multiple words as opposed to memorizing one word at a time and not really understanding why certain words look certain ways, right? So when we think about a word wall, this is sort of a visual I found online of a typical word wall that we might have in our classroom. And we think about some of the words that might be tricky on a word wall to look up. I thought of a couple. So one is they. So they starts with T, and we learn that T says T. But if I'm just writing and I have no idea how to spell they, where would I look on a word wall to find that word? Maybe not under T, right? And it might be confusing. Or what if I'm wanting to write the word not because I tied a knot in my shoelace, for example? Where would I look there? I would most likely look under N because I've learned that N says N, but it starts with a K. So that's why when we think about sound walls and we teach the students that N is represented by multiple letter patterns, that's more meaningful and more powerful. So you may want to consider making that shift from a word wall to a sound wall for those reasons that I just shared, because grouping words by their sounds instead of letters is much more effective at teaching reading and spelling. Students do need to learn that a sound can be represented by many different letters. I mean, if you think about yourself as a speller, even some of us aren't great spellers, right? Thank goodness for spell check. But when we learn all those letter patterns that represent the different sounds, we are better spellers. And that's much more effective than memorizing words for the end of the week spelling test. And this is from this quote down below is by Louisa Moats. It's from her book Speech to Print, which is where a lot of this work comes from. And she really says, and this is very powerful, without awareness of the speech sounds that letter represent, one cannot match letters to sounds and read unfamiliar words. So when we learn those sounds and the various letter patterns, we can read so many words that way. So it's just important to keep that in mind.
And Erin,
So
I want to,
sound, yeah,
can I add as
hop in.
well? We've
Yes.
talked about the word walls, and of course they can have their place in your classroom, but it could maybe look a little bit different. A sound wall is going to be a little more effective, or actually a lot more effective in teaching our students skills for reading and writing. But if you still want to have those high frequency words, maybe just consider a different or an alternative way to display them. A portable word wall, perhaps, or mini word walls for at the table, just different ways. If you do want those words still in your classroom for students to access, absolutely, but maybe just be creative with an alternative so that instead of using wall space for a word wall, you could try the sound wall instead.
And that's an excellent point, Steph. And I also did things where you might do content
Yeah.
related words, and you might have an anchor chart or a smaller bulletin board in your classroom that you dedicate to that. Another useful tool that I used was I had a bank of what I called juicy words,
Oh
which
yeah.
were descriptive words that we would find in different books. This is maybe a little bit older, like it was probably grade 2 and 3 that I did that. And we would have a small little anchor chart that could be below your smart board. It could be on I had a small little bulletin board in my classroom that I would change out with
Yeah.
different types of words. So
Right.
that's a great point. Still those,
Yeah.
word walls are great tools when we
Yeah.
refer to them often and that kids are building onto them, but how they look just maybe is a little bit
Yes.
different.
Yeah.
Okay, so sound walls really do help with reading and spelling, as I just said, so that decoding and encoding. They offer that opportunity for continual review because they are up in your wall in a visual reference. And then they really help kids build orthographic mapping. Orthographic mapping really is that process we use to permanently store words into our long-term memory. And how do we do that? Well, really, when you look at this word at the top of your page, you know that it's right away, without thinking that that word is cat. You didn't have to sound it out. You didn't have to go, well, I know, okay, that's C, it says K. You didn't have to go through that process. It is mapped for you in your mind. And the way mapping works is that when you see a word, you know right away what the sounds are, and you know right away what the corresponding print is. Okay, so, and you probably know the meaning as well, right? That definitely helps bond those words in our mind. So it really is about understanding the sound and then those strings of letters that are bonded to that sound. And then you have that word mapped. And our goal always is to have our students have a large bank of words that are orthographically mapped in their minds, that as soon as they see them, they know them. And that is done much more easily when I focused on sound first and then the corresponding letters, as opposed to just memorizing the words. Okay. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Steph, to talk about how we do this. How do we set this up in our classrooms?
Yes, absolutely. So we get lots of questions about this. How do we use a sound wall? How do we set it up? And we're going to jump into all those and hopefully answer those questions for you really quick. So when we talk about using a sound wall, our focus, we need to focus our instruction on the articulation of the sound, the phoneme, and then the various letter or letter pairs that represent those sounds. So in your instruction, you want to carefully describe and practice what each sound looks like and feels like. So these are great parts of a sound wall. When we talk about what it looks like, that mouth picture is right there for your students to look at, to see and mimic their mouth, making that correct movement and creating the sound in the appropriate way. And when we talk about how it feels, we're looking at what our lips are doing, what our teeth are doing, what our tongue and throat are doing as well. We'll get a little bit more into those questions momentarily. So after the sound is taught, You can show a cueing picture as a reference for your students, and then the letters that make those sounds are then introduced. And you can also add some words to your wall as well to support your students, but we need those components or those elements of a sound wall for it to be the most effective. And so when we listen to the phonemes in a word, we can use a sound wall to identify the different ways to spell the sounds. And Erin mentioned already the word not or no. Our students are going to go to a sound wall and look for they'll find that sound, and then underneath that they'll have the various letter pairs. So they might just see an N or a KN or even a GN, depending on where they are developmentally or what you've introduced to your sound wall. So while those spellings, a GN or a KN, might not be the most frequent, we are supporting our students because they are there on the sound wall for them to look at and see, and that cue is there for them to add it and transfer it to print and their writing. So if you want to jump to the next slide, Erin. Okay, so how do we set them up? Well, when we talk about sound walls, there's usually two parts. You have your consonant wall and your vowel wall. So our consonants are grouped according to how the sound is articulated. So for example, you'll have your stop sounds like t, d, and b, and they're all grouped together by the way the sound is articulated and the manner of which your students are creating that sound. So let's get a little bit more into the groupings. So you can see here, there are 6 different groupings. The first one are the stops. So that's where you are, when you're creating the sound, there is a puff of air that actually comes out of your mouth. So if you do put your hand right in front of your mouth and create the sound B, you'll actually feel the air hit your hand as that puff comes out. There's also voiced and unvoiced sounds within each one, but we're just going to keep it pretty general and talk about just the groupings. The second one are the nasals. And so these are the sounds that you'll actually feel vibration in your nose. So the sound passes through your nose, and try pinching your nose and saying those sounds. M and N. You'll feel the vibration as it goes through. These are your nasals. The next group is the fricatives. So this is where friction is caused through the air or through lips, air, tongue, or teeth. And it can often be described as a hissing sound. So there's lots of vibration and skinny air in these sounds, like a f or v sound. The next one are the affricates, and these are the sounds that begin as a stop but release as a fricative. The next one are glides. So these sounds glide into another phoneme, and it makes it hard to not add the schwa sound to the end. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about the schwa sounds, but I just want to point out now that it is important that you are very careful with how you articulate the sound and how you model it, and that you're not adding the schwa, which is a sound, to the end of your phoneme. So if we're doing T, for example, the sound should be T, not T. And that can be a common error that exists. I know I've had lots of students do that, and it does take quite some time to make sure that they know that each sound is just T and that schwa is not added. So the last sound are the liquids, and this is where the tongue causes partial closure of the mouth, and you push air, or the push of air can cause the liquid to move through the mouth, like L and So these sounds are your liquids. And Erin, do we want to just pop back to the last slide, and we can show those visual cues as well. So you can see here there are the labels on this sound wall example. Erin's pointing to them there. So the stops have a stop sign, and the nasals have a nose. So those visual cues also help your students to understand how they're grouped, and that they have that common articulation between the sounds. Okay. So the next part will be your vowel valley. So there are 5 vowels, sometimes 6 if you're adding a Y, and there's actually about 19 sounds that can be made from those few letters. So again, that kind of shows us why if we just have an alphabet or we just have a word wall, we're not really getting into that comprehensive understanding of all of the sounds that can be made from those few letters. So when we create a vowel valley, the purpose of the valley is actually to show how your chin drops when you make each sound. So it's visually represented in the shape of a valley to mimic the change in your chin and where it's placed. So these two pieces should be displayed together, or the both parts in your classroom. I've had teachers that use a bulletin board for the consonant wall, and then they maybe display the vowel valley. It is a bit smaller, just taped to the wall beside it. Let's say if you don't have two complete bulletin boards to put this up. Okay. All right, so some considerations to think about, some considerations to consider. As you teach each sound explicitly, go through these questions with your students. What are my lips doing? What are my teeth doing? What is my tongue doing? What is my voice doing? And how is the air flowing? So these questions will really help your students articulate the sounds correctly and make sure that you're modeling them as well. So go through these 5 questions, make sure they can see you pronouncing it correctly. And then also another thing you could do is use mirrors for your students to watch themselves make the sounds and see what their mouth is doing and to see what their teeth are doing. So that's just another visual tool that you can use to help them. We have a video here that we want to show you. It takes us through the 44 phonemes, the correct pronunciation, and she explains the schwa sound quite well at the end. So Erin's going to play that for us.
Just going to bag it up here.
You bet.
Okay.
I can't hear it, Erin. Can you hear it?
Yes, I can hear it. You can't hear it?
No, I cannot.
Hold on. It says that I'm sharing my sound.
Oh, yeah, I can't hear it. Let's see.
No, everything's unmuted. I'm sharing the sound in the presentation.
Yeah.
What else did you? But
Yeah.
we had that issue earlier where it wasn't quite sharing, and it wasn't sharing yesterday.
We're missing some kind of setting somewhere.
Yeah, there's something.
Something's askew.
Let me just go in really quick and go to. One sec. Never know.
Yeah, there's always got to be some little hiccup, huh?
There's got to be sound. Speakers, yes.
Okay, well, maybe we don't show the video.
Here, let me. What do you want to do, Steph? Do you want to keep recording?
Yeah, I think we do, and hopefully our viewers can click on the video themselves and watch it, but
I'm just going to go into one more thing. I'm going to go to device settings.
Right.
Okay, I don't know if you can see that. I hope not, but no, it says.
Oh.
Hold on. But it was doing this to me yesterday, but I'm not sure why, but that's okay. Okay,
Yeah.
So
I mean,
we'll just pop on back. You just don't know why these things?
No, we don't know why they happen. The one thing I will talk about the end, when she does talk about the schwa, I know we've talked about how be very careful with how you articulate and how you instruct students to pronounce those sounds, but there are words that actually do have the schwa. It's where the vowel just says that sound. Erin, do you have an example that you can share?
Yes, asleep. Asleep. So even though that A should say it doesn't. It says asleep. So that's considered a schwa. I wouldn't even get totally hung up on that, but it is good for you to know that with certain letters, we are adding a schwa like y and w, but not in t. We're not saying t, or for we're not saying l, because that will impact your students' reading and spelling. But please watch that video. You have the bit.ly to this slide deck, and of course you have the recording, but you have the slide deck or the bit.ly, so you have access to all the links. Listen to this video because it is really powerful. It's been I've watched it so many times and I find it really helpful every single time.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's move on.
Zip along. Yeah. Okay. Some more considerations. Once you've taught the sound, display the mouth and the cueing picture, and then the corresponding letters as they come up in print or in your instruction. And only display the phonemes and graphemes that you've taught. So one thing to do or to think about is that set up your entire wall, set up your consonant wall and your vowel valley, have it all hung and ready and spaced out, but cover the sounds and uncover them as you teach them. It's an overwhelming display, even for us. So make sure that you're just going step by step and you're following a scope and sequence. And as you make it through new sounds, you're revealing them. And, our students get excited to unlock a new sound and just go one by one. So yes, like I said, follow that scope and sequence. And then you can spend some time each day reviewing the sounds or going through your word wall and making your way through the ones that you have introduced and the ones that they are familiar with.
And just one little additive here is
Yeah.
that some of the kits come with these pictures that have a picture of a lock on them. And
Yeah.
so for ease, some teachers have put everything up, right, at one time because it takes time to do that when you're organizing things. But they cover everything not taught yet with a big piece of paper with a little lock on it. And they take that off as they're teaching it. And I guess, like Steph was saying at her school, the kids got very, very excited to see what was going to be unlocked in the next lesson. So that's a way to build anticipation as well, which I think is just, another way to sort of hook our students with this kind of learning.
Okay, so here we have a picture of a kindergarten classroom in our division. And what I like about this is that you can see she's teaching the alphabet. She's got the letters and they're made with different materials, but she also has some elements of a sound wall paired with it. So she has pictures of her students and what their mouth looks like when they make that sound, as well as a cueing picture. This is part of a sound wall. This would not really be a sound wall in its purest, more true form. But as she's introduced these letters or the 26 letters of the alphabet, she's added this additional information, which I think would be great because, once she makes her way through those 26 letters, she could very well, at that point, start a sound wall in its pure form, and her students would already be familiar with some of the elements of it. So this would be this is a neat way that she's started, and it might be something for you to consider too, but basically, especially in kindergarten, when they do need to learn those 26 letters, that is our learner outcome, or that is one of the cusps. They absolutely make your way through that, but then consider transferring that to a sound wall after to really extend their knowledge of the phonemes and graphemes.
And we talked a lot about the different letters that represent the different sounds, right? Yeah. And we've talked a lot about that. In kindergarten, you may not teach and Steph referred to this before, you may not teach every letter combination to those kids in kinder. But if it does come up in print, like Steph referenced before, the N sound is represented by N, but it's also represented by KN and GN. And you might not focus on those as much in kindergarten. You might be focused more on just those single consonants and the single vowels, like the short vowel sounds. But what if it comes up in print, or you're reading a shared reading, you're doing a shared reading experience with the kids on a poem that has not in it. I tied a knot, or talking about that, and you think, yeah, that sounds just like this, and we'll put those letters up to show the kids. Like, I think that can happen very organically.
Yeah.
You can just let your instruction unfold that way. So use your professional judgment.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steph, sorry.
We have scope and sequences, and we're going to share those with you right away. And we recommend that you follow them. But of course, in your instruction, if something like that happens, absolutely, that word wall or that sound wall is already up with all of those listed that you would just need to uncover and unlock a sound that has happened naturally in your instruction. That's a great tool, and you don't need to think of, adding something to your wall. It's already there. It just needs to be uncovered. And I think that's a great experience for your students to be part of.
I do too. That's awesome. So a couple of other reminders is, like we've said over and over, that the importance of using that scope and sequence, sorry. So there's one here that lines up with grade 1 phonics program. So it'll pop up here momentarily. So this follows the exact format of those phonics lessons in grade 1. K can absolutely use this as well. And you can make some professional adjustments, which I know some teachers have, but you would then focus. What you would do is you would introduce the sound first, the articulation of the sound. So the first grapheme here is S, the phoneme is, and you could do that whole articulation of sound, put up the mouth picture, put up that cueing picture, and then dive into the phonics lesson, right? So the sound wall could be a way to enhance those phonics lessons that you're doing with your students, and you can follow this scope and sequence in kinder and grade 1 and even grade 2. Another scope and sequence that I think is just worth printing off is from Keys to Literacy. And it doesn't give you that kind of explicit order, but it shows you sort of those phonics principles, the scope and sequence of those from K to 3, starting with our most, our pre-alphabetic skills. So those are rhyming, syllables, what I hear, those kinds of things, going into things like most common consonants. There's an order here. Then you would introduce some short vowels, things like that. So this I would print off no matter what grade I taught, even if I taught grade 5 or 6. Even though this scope and sequence says K to 3, we know that kids in grade 4, 5, and 6 still are missing some of these pieces. They are, which is why spelling and reading is challenging for them. So when I have this there and I understand these skills on a scope and sequence, it helps my instruction. It helps my teaching. So make sure you've got one. Kindergarten teachers have shared with us that they like, some of you like Jolly Phonics. Still use that. That has a scope and sequence. And that learning is enhanced by all the multi-sensory activities you do. So the songs, the actions, you can absolutely pair that with your sound wall. Do your sound wall first and then dive into that Jolly Phonics lesson following that scope and sequence. So there's not one agreed upon scope and sequence that's the perfect one, but it's usually based on the most common consonants first, some short vowels so that students can start building some simple words. Okay, so just keep that in mind as you're doing your instruction. Review it daily. We all know this is important. We just run out of time sometimes, but prioritize it because this is a lot of bang for your buck, right? Teaching sound walls really does help students with reading and writing. So you want to review those skills daily so they stick. Model for students how you would use it. So this is the sound, but it's represented by these letters. And so when we're spelling words or when we're looking at words, we want to think through all the ways and look up and reference that wall, all the ways that that sound is represented. And then we have been given permission by a teacher who's created a lot of sound wall materials. She's out of the States. Her name is Mrs. Winters Bliss is her site. And this was actually the materials we shared at our summer summit session, but she gave us permission to share with everybody a few of her tools. This is one of them. It's the Phoneme Grapheme Dictionary. For our youngest learners, I would not give them this. It has all the phonemes and then all the corresponding letters. But for some of our older students that still struggle with this, I would share this with them and just help them refer to it. Use it almost like a personal dictionary. Okay, it's got the digraphs in there, all the long vowel combinations and diphthongs, our controlled vowels, some of those schwa words. So it's really great tool. So please feel free to print that for yourself. You can use that for yourself, or if you teach older kids, it can also be a helpful tool for them as long as you scaffold it for them. Okay, so another question that comes up to us quite a bit is, how do I fit this into my day? What does this look like when I'm fitting it into my day? So we wanted to focus sort of on kinder on its own and then kind of grade 1 and up. So in kinder, we usually have a flow to our day, and it starts with a morning routine. And we thought that this could be a beautiful way to embed sound wall work. So usually that morning routine will have some morning message because, again, it's got shared reading in there, which is so important. Telling our students what we're going to do for that day, or giving them a riddle or a little something to think about. We often do a sharing circle of some sort in our kinder and grade 1 days, and sometimes grade 2. And we have a student of the day usually in there. And so I thought, once you do kind of that work, you could very easily do a sound wall lesson with your phonics lesson and then dive right into your phonics lesson. That might be a beautiful thing to embed right there. Then you'd have your movement break and a read aloud, usually with a little literacy and numeracy mini lesson in there. And after that, you might go to center time. Within center time, you usually have some small group work. So you're sliding in beside and talking to students about what they're doing. And that, of course, involves free play and just exploration based on provocations you've put together or things they're exploring in the block center. But it could also mean that this is your opportunity to slide in beside and review sounds with students or some components of phonological awareness. It might be letter formation. So there's opportunities there to reinforce some of those skills as well. Snack time. you know what? It's very powerful to leverage the time when kids are sitting and having snack to pose a question connected to learning, which might include going over the sounds that you've been working on in your sound wall and some corresponding words, right? Another time that where we sometimes have that kind of a little bit of additional time, transitional time, is when the kids are maybe cleaning up after a center, or they're leaving for the day, or they're coming in for the morning. You might then leverage that to pose a question. So what was the sound we worked on this morning? Okay, what are some words that you hear that sound in? Ball, bat, that Ben, a fellow student or something like that. So think about all the sort of really nice kind of organic downtime ways that you can leverage that. And then you might finish your day with Haggerty. So that's that resource that you should all have. If you don't in KN 1 and 2, please email your consultant, we'll send it to you. But that's a resource that focuses solely on phonological awareness, so that oral instruction. And that could be a good time to do it at the end of your day. Now, is this the end all be all? Of course not. We know you have your own flows to the day, but we just wanted you to see how you could embed and infuse this into your day. I was also thinking, if you felt like Steph was saying she always did Haggerty as part of her morning routine, you could absolutely put that there and do sound wall and phonics work later. Totally up to you, but we just wanted to show you a sample. And then on the next slide, this is more appropriate for sort of grade 1 and up, where we would think about sort of our learning goals over the course of a week, as opposed to fitting absolutely everything into the one day. Kinder short, we just usually are with those kids for a morning. So it might look a little different in kinder, obviously, but we would start our day with a morning message, again, because it's just such a great shared reading opportunity for your kids. And you can put so much in that morning message, from looking to errors, to focusing on a phonics skill, to reminding them about rhyming, anything like that. But it could also be connected to math, or understanding in science or social. So just think about how you can really leverage that morning message. And then every day I would do some sort of word work, but that word work might be different. So a couple days a week, I might do my sound wall and phonics lessons. I know Steph shared with me, she did those explicit phonics lessons more than that. She did it 3 to 4 times a week, and that worked for her in her context in her classroom. And then the other times she would reinforce it. So as the kids were writing, she would reinforce that work. As the kids were reading and they were doing a shared reading experience with a big book, she would reinforce that work that they had already covered off in phonics, to help our kids see those connections. I have PA listed there every day, because in K1 and 2, we want to be focused on that work daily. And again, that's the phonological awareness, and we have the Haggerty resource to teach that. And then you'll see some other things there. So maybe a poem of the week in journals. Maybe once a week you're doing a mini lesson connected to reading, so reading strategy or reading skill. And then one day a week you're doing a mini lesson connected to writing. And then our work in literacy stations and maybe more focused writing is going to reinforce that mini lesson work. Okay, so just things to think about. Okay, I'm going to pass it to Steph now to talk about, what if we don't have the space? What are we going to do then?
Okay, thanks, Erin. So yeah, that's lots of people's concern is, where do I fit this in my classroom? It is quite big, and the fact that there's 2 separate sections for the consonants and vowels can make it challenging for you to find the appropriate space in your classroom to put this together and to make the best display that you can. But a few options to think about. You can see here Mrs. Winters, she's the lady right there, and she has a trifold board behind her. And it's right there, she has the vowel valley. I think it would be great to have that, or the consonant wall as well. And then that's something that you can just port around and bring to your carpet area and use if you're doing instruction with your students right there. The other one here is sound wall file folders for personal use. You could make those for your students so that they can carry those around with them. If they're finding flexible seating areas to do their work, they can bring that with them and use that tool, wherever they are in your classroom. If your space doesn't work, like I said, I had a colleague that put her consonant wall up on a bulletin board, and beside it, just on the wall, she taped the vowel valley up just so that it could fit that way. But there's a lot of different options. Oh, my
And
Siri is
Steph,
listening
this
to
is
me.
linked here.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, is everything okay? Yeah,
No,
so
yeah.
So I'll just open it here so people can see. But if you do want to make a copy, again, we have
Yeah,
access to print this if you want to print this for a file folder, because this could be helpful at your small groups or just at your
absolutely.
carpet time, just some
Yeah.
way you want to reinforce that.
Absolutely. And another thing we talked about too is that in a lot of the packages that you can purchase, the cards actually come in different sizes. So you could print the smaller size cards and then maybe find a way to fit the consonant and vowels in the same area in the same bulletin board. And another thing we said too is that have the cards printed for other purposes. You might have them and use it in small group instruction or at the carpet, or maybe you just have it for your students to explore and play when they're at literacy centers or stations. So there's different ways that you can incorporate it. And another one is what we have right here is an interactive digital sound wall. So a sound wall that can be displayed on an interactive whiteboard. What a great opportunity for our students to do during, again, centers, or for you to have that. You could have, part of your morning routine. This could be it. And your students that are helping you work your way through calendar or all those little jobs you might be doing could explore part of this each day as well. So there's lots of opportunities for you to differentiate with this and to use it in multiple ways just to continue to reinforce those concepts and ideas. And the other thing too with a digital sound wall is that this would be a great thing to put on your Google Classroom so that your families have access to it as well. Then we can connect the instruction from school to home, and you could write, send an email or put in the agenda message, let me tell you about this sound, and then they can visit their Google Classroom and show their parents maybe the different letters that can represent a sound that they just learned.
And Steph, you attached a link here to one that teachers can purchase, right? A digital sound wall?
I think so. Do those ones link
Let me
right
look.
there?
I think so.
Yeah. So this one here is again Mrs. Winters, and I believe this virtual version or this digital version is $12. So it's more
Yes.
affordable than the complete package, where you are printing the cards and the teacher instructions. But this might be a great option for our online classes or just, a little addition to reinforce something that you're already doing. Okay. So yes, if you're setting up a sound wall either actually in your classroom or a digital version, you do have components that you need to make sure you have. So the mouth picture, just so that they can mimic the way that their mouth is positioned to correctly articulate the sound, as well as you can create a audio recording of you creating the sound so that they can, again, hear it and mimic it and make sure that they are producing it the correct way, as well as an image to provide that visual support of that sound in a word that they would be familiar with. And the last thing that you would need would be the letter or the letter combinations that represent that sound. So we have a video here. We're not going to play it for you, but you can absolutely watch it if you would like a little tutorial. Trish and Michael do a great job of walking you through how you can kind of customize a digital sound wall and make it fit best for your classroom and for your purpose. And the next slide is also just a little tool that you can use where you can record yourself, again, articulating that sound correctly. And then add that in. And then Erin, I'll just pass this to you.
Sure. So we've included, just as we wrap today, a couple of things for your information. So this first link here is to Reading Rockets, where they have a great article on making the move from a word wall to a sound wall. I love Reading Rockets for so many things. It really does focus more on the emergent reader and materials about all kinds of elements connected to reading and writing instruction that support our most emergent readers. But I love that site. I go there often. And then there is a free Soundwall resource that's here that a teacher shared with me last year that she was using. I'll just show it to you. It has a little bit of that front matter, a little bit of information on setting this up in your classroom. And then it does include a scope and sequence. It does include the labels for your sound wall and the mouth pictures. It doesn't have a cueing picture, which I like, but a grade 4 teacher was using this last year and just put up her own kind of cueing pictures, and she loved it. It was great, and it's free. So just so you know. And then Tools for Reading is another site that I've gone to purchase sound walls. These ones are expensive. They're a couple of $100s, but they're very comprehensive. They have beautiful visuals. You just need to log in to get into Tools for Reading, and it's under Teacher Resources. And so if you go on there, you need help going on there, let me know, but go on there through Google and you can see their resource. And then what we ordered to give out at our summit was from Mrs. Winter's Bliss. And she has a bundle, and I ordered the Soundwall bundle, so it has all the things you need for your board. And then I also ordered the lessons for teachers that came to the summit. So just if you want to explore some different Soundwall resources, either to purchase or there's one there for free, you really do need a kit. Like, you really do need a resource. So please talk to your administrator about that purchase, because the Mrs. Winter's Bliss is just much more affordable. So just consider that. Have a look at these and see which one you might want to purchase if you don't have one yet at your school.
Erin, I want to also just add to, like, one of the things we've also talked about is that it just can be a little bit overwhelming, right? To just get this all going. And there's a lot of resources and a lot of working parts, but I think just starting, right? Like, just
Absolutely.
put up the wall, grab a scope and sequence, and start. You know,
Yes.
there's a lot to it, of course, but it's really not as overwhelming as it may seem. And the phonics coil books that we have and the phonemic awareness books, the Haggerty that we're using, these are all going to work together regardless of if they line up perfectly. They're all amazing tools that are supporting student learning and reading and writing. And even if they're not perfectly, you know, tied to each other at this week or that time, just jump in, just give it a go and start it, and make yourself notes for maybe next year to adjust if necessary. But it seems daunting, but it really is going to be a really useful tool for our students.
Yeah. That's awesome. And if you do have any further questions or need to talk some things through, please feel free to email us. We're all assigned to different schools, and hopefully you know who that person is. But if you're not sure who your consultants are, if you click here, schools show up, you click on your school and you'll see your team. So you see your ELA consultant, your math consultant, your assessment person, all of those things. And so please feel free to reach out with us with any of your questions. So thanks for joining us today. And I'm sure we'll hear from you soon, and hopefully see you soon.
Yes, good luck with your sound wall journey. Right.